She stood barefoot, clothes torn, eyes filled with hunger. He sat in silence, surrounded by luxury, plates full of food. Then she whispered, "Can I eat with you?" What he did next, no one at that restaurant will ever forget. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. It was a sunny afternoon on the patio of one of the city's most luxurious restaurants. Businessmen in crisp suits laughed over glasses of wine. Elegant women in heels crossed their legs delicately as they sipped espresso. Silverware clinked gently on porcelain, and the white tablecloths fluttered softly in the breeze. Waiters moved like dancers, graceful and composed, weaving between tables with practiced ease. It was the kind of place where every detail whispered of wealth, order, and exclusivity. And then she appeared, a barefoot girl, maybe 8 or 9, wearing a tattered, oversized dress. Dirt clung to her knees. Her hair was tangled, and her cheeks were sunken. But it was her eyes that caught attention first. They were wide, dark, and intense, full of hunger, not just for food, but for something else. Something deeper, kindness, maybe, or hope. She didn't cause a scene. She didn't shout or cry. She just walked past the polished glass doors, under the curious stares of the diners, and stood next to a man seated alone at a table draped in black cloth. He wore a navy blue suit. His watch gleamed under the sunlight. A full meal lay before him, untouched. A filet mignon, asparagus, and a warm, golden bread roll. The girl didn't reach for the food. She didn't steal. She just looked at him, then at the roll, and whispered, "Can I eat with you?" And for a moment, the entire patio froze. Laughter stopped mid-sentence. Forks hovered in midair. Someone gasped. A woman muttered, "Where's her mother?" Another diner shook his head and scoffed. "This is a 5-star restaurant, not a soup kitchen." Some people chuckled in disbelief. Others rolled their eyes or turned away in discomfort. A waiter began walking over, clearly ready to remove the girl and escort her out. But before he could, the man at the table held up his hand, stopping him. He looked at the girl, eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in thought. His expression didn't carry disgust or amusement like the others. It was something else, something softer. He pushed his chair back slightly and nodded toward the empty seat across from him. "Of course," he said gently. "Sit down." Whispers erupted across the restaurant. Phones were discreetly raised, ready to capture what many assumed would be a humiliating moment or a publicity stunt. But none of that mattered to the little girl. She climbed into the chair, legs dangling. She stared at the plate with wide eyes, then looked back at the man. "Thank you," she said, barely above a whisper. The man called the waiter, who now stood frozen. "Can you please bring her a plate?" he asked. "And a glass of juice, if she'd like." The waiter hesitated. "Sir, the manager might. She's my guest," the man said firmly, but kindly. "And I'll cover anything she orders." The manager appeared a moment later, visibly uncomfortable. "Sir, with all due respect, this kind of what?" The man interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "Hunger? Dignity?" There was silence. And then, reluctantly, the manager nodded and disappeared inside. The girl began eating slowly, carefully. She didn't devour the food. She didn't act wild or improper. She used the fork, mimicking how the man held his, and occasionally looked up at him for silent approval. "You come here often?" he asked with a small smile, trying to lighten the mood. She grinned, just a little. "No, I usually eat at the park. From the bins. Sometimes people give me apples." His smile faltered. For a moment. Then he leaned forward. "What's your name?" "Amira," she said. "That's a beautiful name." She shrugged. "My mom picked it. She's sick now. Sleeping a lot. I think she's hungry too." The man nodded, his throat tightening. "Where do you live?" "In a shelter. But sometimes we stay on the street if it's too full." The millionaire didn't know what to say. What words could fix a life like hers in a single meal? But he kept listening, and for the first time that day, the girl's voice didn't sound so small that by the time the plates were cleared, the sun had shifted in the sky. The diners who had once sneered were now silent. Some avoided eye contact. Others looked ashamed. The man stood and offered his hand. "Come on, let's go see if your mom's awake." That afternoon, he didn't just feed Amira. He helped her mother get medical attention. He connected them with a social worker he knew. And later, quietly and without fanfare, He arranged for them to move into a safe housing program. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't post it online, but someone who had watched the scene unfold did. A photo went viral. A millionaire in a navy blue suit, breaking bread with a barefoot girl in a torn dress. And beneath it, one simple caption: humanity is not about wealth. It's about heart. And for once, the world didn't scroll past. His name was Mr. Dalton Reed, a billionaire tech investor, a man whose name made stock markets move, known for being cold, calculating, and famously disconnected from emotion. He had it all: mansions in Beverly Hills, a villa overlooking the Mediterranean in Greece, and a collection of luxury cars worth more than most people's entire lives. But that afternoon, Dalton wasn't thinking about boardrooms or buyouts. He was looking at a child, skinny, tired, dust clinging to her bare feet. Her dress was torn in places, hanging off her small frame, like a curtain too big for the window it covered. But she stood tall, chin lifted slightly, like she wasn't afraid of rejection. Or maybe she was, but had learned how to ask anyway. Her voice was soft. "Can I eat with you?" Gasps moved through the restaurant like a ripple. A woman in pearls clutched her purse. A man in a tailored blazer muttered, "This is ridiculous." Cutlery froze midair. Conversations faded. And the waiter, young, clean-shaven, and clearly nervous, rushed over like it was a code red. "She doesn't belong here, sir," he whispered to Dalton, eyes darting to the manager inside. Dalton didn't even flinch. He didn't look at the waiter. His eyes were still locked on the girl. He raised a hand. "No, she stays." The words cut through the noise like a razor. The waiter blinked. A woman 3 tables over let out an audible scoff, tossed her napkin on the table, and walked off in her heels, muttering something about standards. But Dalton didn't care. He looked at the girl and did something no one expected. He smiled, gently, like she was royalty. "You're my guest," he said, voice calm but warm. "Sit down." The girl looked stunned. Her eyes darted around as if waiting for someone to tell her it was a trick. But when no one did, she stepped forward slowly and sat down. Her legs dangled from the chair, toes barely brushing the floor. Dalton turned to the waiter. "Bring her the same meal I'm having. And don't you dare charge her." The waiter hesitated. "Sir, the chef, I own part of this restaurant," Dalton said coolly. "Let the chef know he's cooking for my most important guest today." The waiter nodded and rushed off. Dalton leaned slightly forward, resting his elbows on the table. "What's your name?" "Amira," she replied. Her voice was soft, but this time, not scared. "That's a beautiful name. You hungry, Amira?" She nodded. Dalton grabbed his untouched bread roll, broke it in half, and handed it to her. She took it carefully, like it might fall apart in her hands. Yes, she ate. Slowly, he watched her, not with pity, but with interest. "Where's your mom?" he asked. "Asleep. In the alley." "She's not feeling good," Amira said, between bites. Dalton's jaw tensed. He looked down for a moment, then back at her. "You've been on the streets long?" Amira nodded. "Since winter." A few more diners got up and left. Some whispered judgment. A few others, though, stayed quiet, uncomfortable, maybe even ashamed. A young couple across the patio watched with soft eyes. One of them took a photo, not of Amira's face, but of Dalton's gesture. When the food arrived, steak, potatoes, roasted vegetables, Amira's eyes went wide. She waited, unsure if she could touch it. Dalton smiled again. "Eat, Amira. It's yours." She picked up the fork and began eating. No rush, no greed, just gratitude. Her manners were better than some of the CEOs Dalton had dined with. As they ate, they talked. Not about her struggle, but about cartoons. Birds she liked. A dog she once petted. Dalton listened more than he spoke, and something strange happened. He felt human again. Not the tech tycoon, not the investor, not the boardroom shark. Just a man, sharing a meal with a child who reminded him that no amount of money could replace moments like this. After the meal, Dalton asked, "Would you like to take some food for your mom?" Amira's eyes lit up. "Yes, please." He ordered 2 full meals packed to go, then stood, adjusted his jacket, and offered his hand. "Let's go see if we can help her." Together, they walked out, barefoot Amira beside billion-dollar Dalton. That evening, he made some calls. A private doctor, a social worker, a lawyer. He didn't post any of it, didn't ask for credit. He just got it done. By the next morning, Amira and her mother were moved into a transitional apartment with access to medical care, clean clothes, and food. And Dalton? He sat alone in his office, looking at a photo that had gone viral overnight. A millionaire in a navy blue suit, holding out a chair for a barefoot girl with hope in her eyes. No caption. Just one word trending across social media: humanity. And for the first time in a long time, Dalton Reed smiled. Not because he closed a deal, but because he opened his heart. The girl introduced herself as Maya. She was just 8 years old. Her voice was small, like someone who had spent a long time learning to speak only when absolutely necessary. She didn't offer much detail, but what she did say hit Dalton like a punch to the chest. Her mother had passed away a year ago. Her father? Gone. Disappeared one day and never came back. Since then, she'd bounced between shelters, sometimes sleeping under stairwells or in the back of grocery stores when the shelters were full. This, she said, was her first warm meal in days. Dalton didn't say much in return. He didn't ask probing questions. He didn't cry or make a dramatic scene. He just nodded softly. And every few minutes, he gently slid more food onto her plate, like he was serving a queen. Maya wasn't used to this kind of attention. She wasn't used to being seen. But she was hungry, not just for food, but for care. For a kind of normal she had almost forgotten. Her face lit up when she took her first bite of mashed potatoes. She giggled, a tiny burst of joy escaping her lips. "These taste like clouds," she said with a smile that briefly made Dalton forget the chaos of the world around them. She held her fork like it was a strange tool from a science experiment, and her fingers fumbled over the knife. Dalton reached across gently. "Here," he said, placing his hand over hers. "Not like that. Hold it like this. Careful now, or you'll cut yourself." He guided her hand slowly, showing her how to slice the asparagus on her plate. She paid close attention, nodding, mimicking his movements. For a few precious minutes, the sounds of the restaurant, the murmurs, the gasps, the camera clicks, faded into the background. The table that once only held wealth now held something far richer: human connection. Across the patio, phones came out. People started recording. Some whispered, "Is that Dalton Reed? Is he feeding a homeless girl? Wait, is this a stunt?" But Dalton didn't care. Let them film. Let them speculate. For once, the man known for cold calculations, who built empires through emotionless negotiations, was simply being human. He asked Maya about her favorite color. She said purple, like the sky before it rains. He asked if she liked dogs. She told him about a stray she once named Toothpick because it was so thin. And then, something happened that Dalton didn't expect. She asked him a question. "Are you a prince or something?" she said with a mouthful of vegetables. Dalton laughed, the kind of laugh that hadn't come out of him in years. "No, not a prince. Just a guy with a suit." She tilted her head. "You look like someone from a movie." He shrugged. "Maybe, but I like your dress more than my suit." Maya looked down at her tattered clothes, confused. "But it's old." "It's yours," Dalton said. "That's what makes it special." She smiled again, this time with a mix of pride and surprise. No one had ever said that to her. As they finished their meal, Dalton signaled to the waiter. "Can we get 2 of everything packed to go?" he asked. "Something sweet, too. Maybe chocolate cake." Maya's eyes sparkled. "Chocolate cake? Really?" He winked. "Really?" The waiter returned a few minutes later with neatly packed boxes and a slice of cake topped with fresh strawberries. Maya looked at it like it was treasure. She took a bite and closed her eyes like she was memorizing the moment. When they stood to leave, Dalton offered his hand. She took it without hesitation. They walked past the diners, past the stares and the whispers, past the ones who judged and the ones who didn't know what to feel. Outside, under the sun, he asked, "Where's the shelter you go to?" She pointed toward a block a few streets away. "Let's get you there," he said. "And maybe tomorrow, we can talk about finding you a better place." She nodded, gripping the boxes tightly. That day, Dalton didn't sign a contract. He didn't close a deal. He didn't increase his net worth. But what he did gain couldn't be measured in dollars. That he rediscovered something he didn't even realize he'd lost: his heart. And Maya? She got more than just a warm meal. She got dignity. She got kindness. And for the first time in a long time, she got to feel like a child again, and no longer invisible, and no longer alone. When the meal ended, Maya looked up with those big, honest eyes and said something that left the entire patio speechless. "Thank you for feeding me. But can I take some for my little brother?" The words weren't dramatic. She didn't say them for pity. It wasn't a plea. It was simple, pure, spoken like a girl who had learned to think of others before herself. Dalton Reed, the billionaire, tech investor who had spent a lifetime solving problems with logic and money, didn't respond right away. He paused, the weight of her words settling in. This little girl, who hadn't tasted a real meal in days, wasn't asking for more for herself. She was thinking of her baby brother. That moment cracked something inside him. Without a word, he waved over. "The waiter. 2 full meals, packed to go. Add some fruit, and anything sweet you have left. She's not leaving empty-handed." The waiter, who earlier had tried to remove Maya from the restaurant, didn't say anything this time. He just nodded. Quietly. Quickly. The shame in his eyes said more than words ever could. Maya wiped her mouth with the napkin, trying to be polite even though she'd never been in a place this fancy. Dalton stood up. He took off his tailored, deep blue coat, a coat worth more than what most people made in a month, and gently placed it over her shoulders. It draped past her knees. She looked up, startled. "I'll get it dirty," Dalton smiled. "That's what coats are for." Then he said, "Let me walk you home." There was no limo waiting at the curb, no driver rushing forward, no cameras clicking from PR staff. Dalton didn't call for security or try to make a grand statement. He simply walked with her, a billionaire and a little girl in a torn dress, side by side, on the sidewalk. Behind them, the restaurant had gone completely still. Some diners sat, with their forks frozen, unable to eat. Others had tears quietly running down their cheeks. One couple stood up and clapped, softly, respectfully. Even the waiter, the one who tried to push Maya away earlier, looked down at the floor, regret carved into his face. Because in that one moment, every assumption, every barrier of class, every judgment shattered. And as they turned the corner and disappeared from view, no one dared to speak. That night, someone uploaded a video. It wasn't professionally shot. Just the diner's phone, slightly shaky, but real. It captured the exact moment Dalton wrapped his coat around Maya. It showed her small hand gripping the takeout bag, and it followed them, 2 silhouettes under the afternoon sun. As they walked away together, no words were added to the clip. No dramatic music, no hashtags or campaigns. But it didn't need them. By morning, the video had gone viral. Millions watched in awe. Some cried. Others shared it with one word: humanity. Comments flooded in. "This restored my faith in people." She didn't ask for a favor. She asked for dignity. A billionaire gave up his coat and gained the world's respect. Dalton never posted about it. He didn't write a caption or hold a press conference, because it wasn't about fame. It wasn't about reputation. It was about one little girl who had the courage to walk up to a stranger, and one man who chose to say yes. In the days that followed, more emerged. Dalton arranged housing for Maya and her brother, got them enrolled in a local school, connected them with counselors, mentors, and even set up a trust fund for their future, quietly, privately. When asked by a close friend why he did it, Dalton replied, "She reminded me that kindness isn't charity, it's responsibility." And Maya, she never forgot that day. The food was delicious. The cake, unforgettable. But what stayed with her the most wasn't the taste. It was the feeling of being seen, of being treated like she mattered, of walking beside someone who didn't look down on her, but walked at her side. And for the rest of her life, that feeling carried her forward. Not because a rich man helped her, but because he saw her humanity and honored it. The next morning, the world was still buzzing from the video, but Dalton Reed, the man at the center of it all, wasn't reading the headlines. He wasn't sitting for interviews. He wasn't planning a press release or drafting a viral post. Instead, he showed up quietly at the shelter where Maya lived. Not with cameras, not with a PR team, just himself and bags full of groceries, clean clothes, warm blankets, school supplies, coloring books, storybooks, even toys for Maya's little brother. When the staff opened the door and saw him standing there, they didn't recognize him at first. The billionaire looked almost unassuming without his tailored suit. But it was the expression on his face that said the most. He wasn't there for a show. He was there for them. Maya came running down the hallway barefoot, coat still wrapped around her small frame. Her eyes lit up the second she saw him. "You came back," she whispered. Dalton knelt down, smiled, and handed her a warm muffin wrapped in paper. "I made a promise, didn't I?" Then he looked around at the staff and the children. His voice was quiet but clear. "You'll never go hungry again." That wasn't just a promise to Maya. It was a declaration, a commitment. Within days, Dalton had arranged for Maya and her younger brother to move into a small, fully furnished apartment. It wasn't a mansion or anything extravagant, but it was safe, clean, and theirs. A place to sleep without fear. A place to grow. He paid for their education, their medical checkups, and quietly set up a monthly stipend through a private foundation, ensuring Maya and her brother had what they needed without ever having to beg for it again. But what shocked people the most wasn't the money. It was Dalton's presence. Every week, he visited. No cameras, no fanfare. He sat on the floor and helped Maya with her homework. He taught her brother how to play chess. He brought books instead of flowers, games instead of gadgets, and he never once acted like a hero. He didn't want to be called a savior. He wanted to be their friend. He listened to Maya talk about her dreams, becoming a teacher or maybe a writer. He encouraged her when she stumbled. He celebrated when she brought home her first A on a test. One afternoon, months later, a reporter finally caught up with him. The world still wanted to know, why? Why would a billionaire, a man known for ruthless boardroom negotiations, spend his time helping a homeless child? Long after the cameras stopped rolling, Dalton's answer was simple. Because the richest thing I've ever done was share my dinner with her. That moment, one plate, one question, one child brave enough to ask, had changed everything for him. He realized that all the success in the world meant nothing if you couldn't look someone in the eyes and treat them like they mattered. Maya wasn't asking for luxury. She wasn't looking for attention or even charity. She was looking for dignity. And in that restaurant, in front of strangers who scoffed and stared, one man made a decision to see her not as a problem, but as a person. And that single act of kindness, it rippled outward. The restaurant later started a pay-it-forward meal program. People across the country donated to shelters in Maya's name. Even the once judgmental waiter started volunteering weekly at a local children's center. Because kindness, when real, is contagious. Maya's story wasn't about being rescued. It was about being remembered, being seen, being valued, and thanks to one man's heart and one shared plate. Her story now inspires millions. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories that restore faith in humanity. Yellow heart, because sometimes the smallest gestures become the biggest turning points. And all it takes is one plate, one promise, one moment of compassion,